a lot to you that still does is Dion. Um,
Yes.
you've had some interactions with him. Why don't you? I mean, it's going back and forth. We could kind of end it on like this. Was this your first rock star as a kid? Like, this is the guy I want to emulate.
It's like the impetus for the book, practically.
Well, the book opens with me as a 10-year-old in Euclid, Ohio, listening to the transistor radio, and I mean, I've said this my whole life. I didn't just make this up for the book. The first song that really hit me was "The Wanderer." I mean, I'm 10 years old. He's 21-year-old. We now know in retrospect, a heroin addict. Italian American in the Bronx, and what he's singing, is speaking to and for a 10-year-old kid in Euclid, Ohio. But I was a huge Dion fan. And when I realized early on that he wrote so many of his own songs, it just, got me. I lost him like so many did in the mid 60s. He came back with Abraham Martin and John. I saw him solo acoustic at Duke. And I followed him off and on, throughout my life. He was just always special to me. And yes, in the last year or two, and it's how the book ends, I've had an opportunity to spend some time with him. I was, I'm a Facebook guy, and I saw a post one day, probably following Dion on Facebook, I don't know where I saw it, that there was a musical coming along about his life, The Wanderer, which will, in fact, I hope, open at Paper Mill in New Jersey next spring. It's the third time that's been scheduled. So if we get this pandemic behind us, it'll open next spring. So I have a friend who's on the Rock Hall board and heavily involved in Broadway productions. And I called her. I said, "Do you know anything about this?" She said, "No, not a thing." And the next day, she called me and said, "You're not going to believe this, but I got an email from the executive producer of the show asking if I was interested in investing, and I'm not, but I'll send it to you." So I said, "Sure." I've spent at this point 40 years advising clients not to invest in things like this, but she sent it to me, and I ended up calling the executive producer, and I probably told her that Dion story and told her about how I'd seen Dion at South by Southwest a couple of years earlier with an acoustic guitar, leading 200 people singing Run Around Sue at the Driscoll Hotel. So I was going to be in New York on business, and she and the writer and the stage manager, whatever he's called, came and saw me, and I ended up agreeing to invest in the musical. So, I'm all excited, and right before the pandemic, late February of 20, there was a reading of the musical. Now, at that point, it's scheduled to open at Paper Mill, one of the leading stepping stones to Broadway, just a few months later. And she called and asked, I'm sure all the investors, if we wanted to come. And I said, sure. So my wife and I went in to New York and end up in this rehearsal space. I don't even know these spaces exist, in an office tower in Manhattan. And, you get off the elevator and there's all these little sound rooms and stuff. There's Steve Van Zandt sitting there. He's the musical director for The Wanderer. And we end up, going into this small room. There's no more than 50 people, but all the cast is sitting there, and the band, they're going to run through the entire musical, start to finish. And right before the musical is ready to start, the door opens and in comes Dion. And people are getting up and hugging him and high-fiving him when he looks around. And he picks up a folding chair and he brings it over, and I'm sitting on the center aisle, and he sits it down right next to me. I've got my wife there. She's my witness. And he's there for about 30 seconds. And I turned to him and I said, "There's people in this room who have a lot more money invested in this, but nobody has more passion invested than me." And he asked, he said, "What's your name?" I said, "Alec Whiteman." And he said, "You're Alec Whiteman?" It turned out there was a guy in the crowd there from Cleveland who I did not know, but knew who I was through the Rock Hall involvement. And Dion called him back, and we ended up talking. And then Dion sat next to me for 3 hours while this musical of his life unfolded. And then we talked a bunch. And the truth is, we've stayed in touch. You've seen the book. He was kind enough. I sent it to him. I asked him to to read it. Certainly read the stuff about him, make sure that I didn't misstate anything. He was important enough to me. And, there's some stuff, he had some ups and downs in his life for a while, been up for a long time. He gave me a blurb which we ended up using on the front cover. I've stayed in touch with him, actually. He's a wonderful guy.
This has to be way more thrilling than you're letting on right now.
Like I said, when we get off the camera here, I'll turn around and go, yes, yes.